Why don't we begin? I just want to welcome all of you and thank you all for getting up, and somebody mentioned on this cold, wet, dreary day to join us. We're so excited to be trying these new formats given COVID-19 for our virtual homecoming. There's a lot of stuff going on, so please take a look at the list and see if there are other things you'd like to join. We've got some great information coming in from Eric on the law school. I think we're all very, very excited. So without further ado, Dean Mitnick, take it away.
Thank you, Wendy. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see everybody on this rainy morning, Saturday morning. I thought what I would do is share some of the, especially some of the stats that have been going on at the law school, some of the things that we've been doing over the last couple of years. It's been pretty extraordinary couple of years since we received full accreditation in 2016. So I'm going to share the screen and go over some of the stats so that we can look at them together, and then we can pull back out and have a discussion. So let me see if I can do this. All right. So, put that down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you saw that? I'll share.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to see that first? That's fine. So this is the lobby at the law school right now. If you've ever been there, you know that it didn't look like this just a couple of months ago. And in fact, if you went now, this old glass block wall is now down as well. And there's a temporary wall. And let's see if I can show you. Let's see. Well, let's do this. All right, now we'll be able to see. So this was the lobby that we've all come to know and not so much love, right? With its furry walls and, you know, distressed doors and, you know, old carpeting and the like. And this is what it's going to be like in December when we return. You know, in December, this is just a computer generation drawing rather than a photograph, obviously, but a pretty extraordinary transformation, I think, covering up the area where the bathrooms are, all new furniture, and this is the result of a gift from Jean McCormick, who I think in a very sort of prescient way decided to make this donation and name the new space the Arc of Justice Learning Commons. And you know, recognizing some of the racial injustice that we're all struggling against these days. She was thinking about this even before the most recent movements started. You can also get a view of it aerially from here, but it's going to be a really wonderful space for our students. And that's what we were mainly thinking about, is how do we create a great gathering space for students. And I'm so looking forward to when we can actually gather again and be there, and we will be able to. And when the students return, it's going to be pretty extraordinary. But that wasn't what I was planning to show you. Let me show you some of what's been going on at the law school. I think most of you know that the law school was founded a long time ago, in 1981, as the Southern New England School of Law, acquired by UMass Dartmouth in 2010. Provisionally accredited in 2012, and then full accreditation a year early, actually, in 2016. But I think the really extraordinary story is the growth of the law school over the last 5 years. It was even before this year, between 2017 and 2019, out of over 200 law schools, the UMass was third in the country for enrollment growth. And you can see that the most recent year was a quantum leap even beyond that. And so when the comparative data comes out, I think UMass Law over the last 5 years will be #1 in the country for increased enrollment. And It's not just a question of increased enrollment, it's also increased credentials of the entering class. You can see it's not that we've just been, admitting everyone who applies. Instead, the law school has just, I think, the value proposition and the quality and the mission and the identity of the law school, as the only public law school in Massachusetts, a really strong social justice mission. Len is on the call, he knows this well. Our access to justice mission, which we can talk about in a little while, has really resonated, I think, with prospective law students. And so our first year class in the last 5 years has more than doubled. The overall student body has almost doubled in that period. And at the same time, the stats, the LSAT medians, the undergraduate grade point average medians have also increased. Really an extraordinary growth and strength story at the law school over the last few years, which is heartening to see, especially since we are graduating more public service lawyers than any law school in New England over the last 5 years. And you can't do public service unless you're able to graduate without an extraordinary amount of debt. And so, that's why we exist. And it's just been heartening to see how this has unfolded over the last several years. I think part of that enrollment success has been the outreach that we've done to undergraduate institutions across the state. We now have 13 of these 3+3 programs in place. If you're not sure what a 3+3 program is, essentially it allows a student to get both an undergraduate and a law degree within 6 years rather than 7 years. Again, serving the mission so that they graduate with less debt, one less year of living expenses and tuition, so that they're able to graduate and represent some of the folks who otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford to be represented. So we're now at a point where I don't know that there's another law school in the country that has as many 3+3 programs as we do. For a long time, there was a 3+3 program between the law school and UMass Dartmouth, but we're now at a point where we have a 3+3 program with almost every 4-year public university in Massachusetts. I think there are only 2 out of, I don't know, a dozen or so that are left. And we are starting to do it with private institutions as well. We also have now 3 joint degree programs, including one with Bridgewater State, Masters in Social Work, which again serves the mission. We're starting to get social work students into our Justice Bridge Incubator program. We'll talk about Justice Bridge in a little while too. But you can see some really just standout performance from the law school. In 2019, out of 15 law schools in New England, no law school graduated a larger percentage of students of color than UMass Law. And I think probably this chart tells the story of our success more than anything else. We recognized really early on that the main reason why most people go to law school is to pass the bar exam and get a job. And the more successful we can be in helping our graduates pass the bar exam and get jobs, you end up on this virtuous cycle rising with further enrollment and higher entering credentials, which leads to greater bar pass and greater employment outcomes. Because of course, you can't get a bar required job unless you pass the bar exam. And so on the July 2019 Mass bar exam, our pass rate was above the state average. Extraordinary for a school that's only been fully accredited for 4 years, outperforming a number of law schools that have been around for decades. And on the February bar exam, it's a smaller number of takers. And so you have to take that into account. But we were 3rd in the state in February. And that wasn't the first time we were 3rd in the state. If you went back to July 2018, we had a 92% bar pass rate. And that was 3rd in the state. So, most recently we've been 3rd, 5th, 3rd really extraordinary. And part of that, I have to, tip my hat to our bar prep director. I think we have the best bar prep director in the country in Lori Alban. She is a bulldog with our students, and she, stays on them to their own benefit, and provides emotional support. She's available to them 24/7, all the way through the bar study process. And I think a lot of the results, a lot of the success that we've had is a result of the success that our graduates have had on the bar exam. You can see there are only 2 law schools in the state that froze tuition this year. It was Harvard and us. We're the only law school where you can still go for under $30,000 a year if you're in state, and even our out-of-state tuition is far below all the other law schools in Massachusetts. And I will pause here just to say how important that is. If you were to go into, Len knows this well, but if you were to go into housing court in Massachusetts, what you would see is people facing eviction and foreclosure on their own. It's over 90% of the folks in Massachusetts, right here in our Commonwealth, who can't afford lawyers. And interestingly, 70% of landlords are also unrepresented. And so, if you went into family court, it's almost as bad. And if you think about what goes on in family court, not to be depressing on a Saturday morning, but this is the fabric of people's lives. It's the custody of their kids. It's their their marriages and just stuff that is critical to future success for folks in the Commonwealth. And over 80% of people in family court can't afford lawyers. In immigration court, I said a little while ago, we know that the outcome is 5 times better if you have a lawyer. And because we've been able to hold tuition down, and in fact, a third of our students are on a half tuition scholarship after having agreed to work in public service for at least 4 years after graduation. But all of our students are able to graduate with less debt. And then through programs like the one that Len runs, the Justice Bridge program, and also through pro bono work that they're able to do to represent folks who otherwise would have gone into court without a lawyer. I will just say our Justice Bridge program has now helped out close to 9,000 people since 2014, who otherwise in this Commonwealth would have gone without representation. Like I said a second ago, you can't get a bar required job without passing the bar exam. And so it's been pretty extraordinary to watch the success in employment outcomes as well. The ABA is very, very careful these days about how to report employment outcomes. And so there's some technical definitions here, and I won't bore everyone, but basically the sort of the apples to apples comparison across law schools tends to be in this so-called gold standard category of full-time, long-term bar required jobs. Now, we all know in the real world, not everybody wants a full-time, long-term bar required job. Some people are parents and they want to work 4 days a week. That doesn't count as a full-time, long-term job. Some people, we had our managing editor of our law review a couple of years ago, got his dream job at WGBH in media law. But it's not a bar required job. You don't have to have passed the bar to do it. And so he doesn't count in this statistic. And so, in some ways, I think the more pertinent statistic is the all bar and so-called JD Advantage statistic. JD Advantage means you had to go to law school to get the job. And so I think this column over here on the right really shows probably most realistically, and this is not the ultimate employment rate for any law school. Our employment rate was over 85%, but some of those jobs, the truth is you didn't have to go to law school to get those jobs. And so, but even just focusing on the gold standard jobs, you can see the development of the law school over the last several years. the percentage of graduates who've received a full-time long-term bar required job has more than doubled since 2013. And it's gone up consistently every year. Now, I am worried about 2020. We're all worried about 2020 and our graduates. The bar exams have been delayed. They've gone through the most extraordinary challenges of any class in recent memory. But we're going to be there and we're going to be supporting them as they hopefully pass the bar exam. And if not, we'll be there with them when they retake the bar exam and in their job searches as well. A couple of other stats here I'll just go through. Again, #1 in Massachusetts and New England over the last 5 years for the percentage of graduates going into public service jobs, fitting really well with our mission as the only public law school in the state. We were again ranked #1 in Massachusetts and New England and 14 in the country by National Jurist magazine for preparing students for careers in government. And again, that's largely a result of our public interest law fellowship, where students are able to, under the direction of Assistant Dean John Quinn, engage with legislators and public service lawyers from throughout the Commonwealth, and this year from around the country, because we're all online. And so we're able to bring in speakers from all over the country. We were ranked 3rd in New England, behind only Harvard and Yale, in a study that was done by a professor at Roger Williams Law School, one of our peer institutions in Rhode Island. And Professor Ryan, what he did was, I think, a really valuable sort of study. He looked at what law schools have added value, looking at the entering statistics of law schools and looking then at the bar pass and employment outcomes. And you've just seen our bar pass and employment outcomes. Which law schools have actually added value for their graduates? And only Harvard and Yale in all of New England added more value than UMass Law to graduates. And you can see part of the reason for that also is our emphasis on practical training. We were 3rd in Massachusetts. I think it was behind only Northeastern and Harvard. And #5 in New England, tied with Yale in Pre-Law Magazine for practical training. The public service mission is one that resonates with our students. They're self-selecting. They come in committed to doing pro bono work. We were one of the first law schools in the country to require every single law student to do at least 30 hours of pro bono legal services while in law school. And yet, even though we require 30, the average student does 150. I mean, it's extraordinary to watch our students come in, be trained, and go out and help people. And so the law students at our law school have contributed now in the last decade over 150,000 hours of pro bono legal services to the community. A conservative estimate I saw calculated put that a value over $6 million. And I think that's a really conservative sort of estimate. A lot of what we do is through our clinics. That's where our students get practical training. We have 5 clinics at the law school, the Community Development Clinic, which is a business law clinic. People don't think about business law when we talk about access to justice and the inability to afford lawyers. They think about businesses as being able to have the sort of funds and resources available to hire lawyers. But the truth is, when we have startup businesses, they can't always do that. And we represent nonprofit organizations as well through the Community Development Clinic. And so this clinic enables our students to represent businesses that then turn into economic engines for the region, providing free legal services to folks in the community. We have a criminal prosecution clinic, which is, in some ways, it is, I think, the most popular clinic. It is always fully subscribed, and it's housed in the Bristol County DA's office. It's taught by the first assistant district attorney, William McCulley, in Bristol County. And our students were there. They work in, they worked on the Aaron Hernandez case. They work in, this is not sitting back and doing research. They're actually going into court. They're handling bail hearings. This is as a second or a third year law student, and the experience they get in the criminal prosecution clinic serves them well, whether they go on to become a district attorney, a public defender, a litigator, or just about anything else. Our Human Rights at Home clinic is unique in the country. If you look at law school human rights clinics, they typically have an international focus, a policy focus, and we don't. We're representing real people in our communities. So that's why we call it the Human Rights at Home clinic. The number one sort of client that we have in the clinic is a survivor of domestic violence. We represent transgendered individuals, veterans, prisoners, and they do some policy work. They did a Bill of Rights for the city of New Bedford, for example. They did a transportation study because people can't use services if they can't get to those services. And so they've been able to do that kind of policy work, but at the same time, unlike virtually any human rights clinic in the country, they're representing real folks right here in our community. We were talking a little while ago about my colleague Irene Scharf, and she has run our immigration litigation clinic for probably about 17 or 18 years at this point. In many ways, that has been one of the most successful programs at the law school, representing undocumented immigrants, unaccompanied minors, political asylum applicants, really extraordinary. And we have a tribal law clinic, which is really exciting and unique for the area. Representing members of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, both in tribal court and in civil court. So through these 5 clinics, we're able to help people in our community, provide free legal services, work on access to justice, trying to close that access to justice gap. None of this would happen if there weren't a public law school in Massachusetts. And the same goes for the Justice Bridge program, probably the most innovative program at the law school and maybe in the country. This is our incubator. This is where we have recent graduates who will go into offices both in Boston and New Bedford. We have about 19 recent graduates now in both of those offices, doing what we call low bono work. It's not pro bono because they have to establish themselves. They have to, be able to feed their families and themselves like themselves, but working on all sorts of really innovative new ways of charging for legal services, serving as the director often says, as a laboratory for how legal services can be provided in a more affordable way using technology. We have a number of technology partners. And this is, since 2014, serving thousands of modest means clients throughout the Commonwealth. Really an extraordinary program, and one that sits at the heart of the mission of UMass Law School. I don't want to take too much more time, but we're starting to get recognized. We got the Public Service Award, the first law school ever to get the Public Service Award from the Mass Bar Association. This is the statewide bar association. We've had Rappaport Fellows selected 6 years in a row. We were ranked among the top schools in the country for practical training 2 years in a row. One of our students got the Oliver Wendell Holmes Scholarship. And one of the things I'm most proud of is how our law students have been engaged scholars, right? This is law students. This is not faculty, law students publishing. And I need to update this list, but our law students have published across the country. Harvard Journal on Legislation, the UCLA Women's Law Journal, William and Mary Journal of Race, Gender, and Social Justice, and international journals as well. And this doesn't happen without an engaged student body and a supportive faculty. And so, I'll stop my little, story there. But it's been a really extraordinary sort of time at the law school over the last few years. the development of the law school since receiving full accreditation really could not have been stronger. I think it's probably not just in terms of enrollment, but the increase that we've had in bar pass outcomes, employment outcomes. I think it would be hard to find a law school that has been more successful over the last 5 years than UMass Law. And more than anything, I think that points to what a powerful and noble idea it was to found a public law school in Massachusetts, a place where legal education started, and where for 300 years there was no public option for legal education. So it's been extraordinary, and we're just at the beginning. We'll see where it takes us over the next several years. So, but let me see if anybody has any questions, and we can just engage in a conversation for the rest of our time.
Eric, I have a couple of questions that have been sent in. If anybody has a question, please jump in as I'm doing this.
Sure.
One of the questions, and I think it's on everybody's mind, is what's going to happen? What adjustments are we going to make with COVID-19 if it continues into the spring? And just wondering, what kind of changes would you make, if any, to better how things are working at the law school given COVID?
Yeah, it's been an extraordinary challenge for everybody, right? Mentally, emotionally, it's been an extraordinary challenge. We were at the law school, we were planning for the hybrid model, where we have some students in person and some students who are participating remotely all at the same time. And so, and I think this is going to serve us well even after the pandemic in a lot of ways. We installed video capture and live streaming capabilities in all of our classrooms. We measured all of our classrooms for physical distancing. And so it's a real challenge when you have a classroom that is supposed to hold 90 and you can have about 28 students in the classroom. And so we went through all of our classrooms. We restructured the course schedule to enable every cohort to have at least some in-person classes. We created ingress and egress patterns all over the law school, new hand sanitizer stations everywhere, extensive cleaning schedules, training faculty. And then about a week before classes started, we decided to go fully remote. The university adopted a policy, which I think was a smart policy. I think it was the right decision, that every course that can be delivered remotely should be delivered remotely. And so we are fully online this semester. And I think, to answer your question, Wendy, it's gone, I think, really well. It's been nice to see how the faculty are supporting each other. I think, quite frankly, I think part of the enrollment growth this year, the extraordinary enrollment growth this year, is a result of just how well the faculty have done in being able to deliver course content online. Thinking about next semester, we're still not sure, but we've got all those plans in place. If we want to adopt that more hybrid model, if we can go in person, now we're all set up to do it. I don't know what's going to happen. It's hard to predict. I think we're all going through that thought process right now. But in terms of, thinking about how we're going to improve things, it's much less in terms of the instructional mode and much more about how do you build community when you are spread out across the country? How do you create a sense of connectedness among a community? And so, we're not waiting for the spring to do that. We're jumping into it right away, and we're starting to do kind of town halls that you see at other institutions. And lots of events, and we're taking advantage of the technology. I mean, we're bringing in speakers from all around the world for our students to be able to listen to in classes, for student organizations. With the passing, for example, the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg, that was a momentous event for our students. And so we've come together and we've done a number of different panel discussions as a result of that. That's just one example, but you know, it's gone, I think, really well. Not that we don't want to stay in this kind of virtual environment for everywhere, but it really has, I think, gone as well as anybody could have predicted. So we're working on it.
Eric, how are your clinics functioning?
Oh, yeah, that's really a good question. I mean, you know, so if you have to go to the dentist, you have to go to the dentist. If you have to, you know, have a doctor feel your organs, you got to go in person. But for legal services, you really don't have to do that. The truth is, so to answer the question, we're running every single one of our clinics. All of our experiential education is ongoing, and you can do that with legal services. And in fact, what we're finding is that our clients of the clinics are actually more able to take advantage of the services because they don't face the transportation challenges that they otherwise would have. You know, I mean, there is a bus stop outside the law school, but it's still, for many people, it's very difficult to get to the clinics. And so it's been full steam ahead. And in fact, I think there's a greater need now than there was prior to the pandemic for our services. And so again, full steam ahead. We've been able to really continue with the pro bono work. A lot of that is now virtual. Len and I were on a board together for Justice Bridge, and one of the judges who had been around for a while, he said two things that sort of have stuck with me throughout this pandemic. One is he'd been around and been through a lot of things in the 20th century. And he said, you know, you got to tell your students that they have to look beyond this pandemic because it's going to come. And you have to, you know, look beyond it and plan for it. The other thing he said was he likes court hearings virtual. He can hear better. He can see better. And it's changing law practice in that way. You know, lawyers don't have to drive 2 hours to Boston and look for parking, right? Clients don't have to take the day off from work and go to court. And so, you know, I think we're lucky in a way that we're able to practice virtually, but I think it's been really interesting. I mean, none of us, I don't know, not none of us, I and many of my colleagues, we had never heard of Zoom before all this started. And, you know, it's a cliche, but necessity is the mother of invention. And that is really, I think, what's been going on more than anything else in experiential education and just about everything else too. Tom.
Thank you, Eric.
Sure.
I am totally impressed and embarrassed to suggest that I wonder if you might stretch yourself in another way.
Sure.
A number of years ago, when the Massachusetts Office of Dispute Resolution moved from Boston onto the Dorchester campus at UMass, I served briefly on the board, and I was very excited about the interest at that time of moving dispute resolution or conflict resolution upstream to more of the what you might call confusion mitigation. I had a discussion with Mary Lou Bilak about 6 years ago that was quite substantive, but at that time she was very concerned that a new program could upset the momentum that was in place with the faculty. So it wasn't considered at that time. But I remain convinced that mediation skills are a lifeblood that can connect all of the colleges. It's a civic skill that I think everyone should know. And I do think that UMass Dartmouth Law School had been pioneering some community awarenesses around Robert Rules of Order, which of course makes sense because they were created in New Bedford. But
I didn't know that. That's extraordinary. Really?
Yeah, they were. It was.
Wow.
I could go into the history. I'd love to talk to you about it, but I don't want to waste the group's time at this moment with it. But I am interested in terms of a research area about multi-party, multi-level confusion mitigation, because it sits on the very front end of the law practice, but it requires the responsible commitment to practice that I think law brings to discussions. And it's critically needed where we're looking at infrastructure renewal on the South Coast. If we talk about anything relates to zoning or coastal management adaptations, we'll see a plurality of interests that are almost in conflict, if not in conflict. And I think that the management of that is a research area that's ripe for significant funding.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Tom. And in fact, ADR, alternative dispute resolution mediation, is the next area in which we're trying to move. It is, we're still a small law school, right? We have 350 students now, so not as small as we used to be. And so we have a small faculty. And so we've identified about 3 or 4 different areas strategically to move into, and alternative dispute resolution is one of those. And so I think over the next 2 or 3 years, as we bring in faculty, and we of course have to staff our core courses. And so what we do is we hire somebody who's going to be teaching, civil procedure and environmental law. We hire somebody who's going to be doing contracts and mediation, right? And so it's going to take a couple of years to find the right people to do this. But we've only been fully accredited for 4 years, and so it's the next area. I think that it is really important, and we're going to be moving into that moving forward. And I will tell you, at my last institution, we had an extensive mediation program where we got the students into the small claims court, and they were able to, even as law students, learn how to do the mediations. And I think it's an incredibly important skill for lawyers as they're developing. So yeah, I think that's really important. And I'd welcome a conversation with you about it. So let's get together. The law school's in a different place than it was 6 years ago. So, and we can talk about Robert's Rules of Order too. That's an amazing history. So thanks for the question. And I look forward to talking to you about it. Really do.
If I could just interject, I'd love to be involved in a conversation with you as well. Are you talking about the Mass Office of Public Collaboration at UMass Boston?
Susan Jagillian had brought the
Yes.
program down, and I had
Sure.
worked closely with
Yeah.
her. She can vouch for me. As creative as I might be, I still have some sanity in me.
She could vouch for me too. We've been in touch with her since we were founded, actually, Justice Bridge 6 years ago. And she is involved. In fact, she's quoted on the press release of the governor with respect to the housing eviction diversion initiative. And I am going to be reaching out to her actually this coming week. At Justice Bridge, that is a key aspect of what we do. We're talking about people who are going through, as Eric was mentioning, life-changing legal issues. And they're very interesting and they're very complex. There's just one problem: they don't have a lot of money. And so how do you get to a resolution sooner rather than later? Something that's fair and equitable for all parties. And that's a key aspect of the limited scope representation techniques that we do. And so we're very engaged in mediation efforts. And particularly now, the reason I want to reach out to Susan is today is the day that the governor's moratorium is being lifted. And there are literally going to be maybe as many as 10,000 people who are at risk of evictions in this state. One of our mentors, an Access Fellow in our program, is retired Judge Wilbur Edwards, a housing court judge. He's helping us. We've been preparing all summer, for he calls it a tsunami of cases. And so how do we arrive at a fair result? We can't put all these people out on the street. This is a reality. It truly is a raining day today for these folks. So I would love to be involved and get your insights into that, because of necessity, that's what we need to do. We need to find results sooner rather than later for these folks, something that's fair and workable.
Well, please do give my regards to Susan. When I spoke with her before I spoke to Mary Lou, she was interested in ways that she might reach her hands out to the UMass Dartmouth campus too. And I think it could make a very interesting Zoom call if Eric, you and Susan and I could get together at some point. So I'm all on board with this. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
So Tom, just shoot me an email. You can find my email online and just shoot me an email and we'll make that happen. But you
Okay.
can see why Justice Bridge sits at the heart of what the law school does. I mean,
Yeah.
we are, we have, our students are going in there as interns, as field placements, working on all of these things with the lawyers in Justice Bridge. And I think one of the things that we didn't really predict, but that has been really interesting, is watching the feedback loop. While our students go in and our graduates are working with mentors in Justice Bridge, what we find out is what they were missing in their legal education, right? And I think some of the mediation skills that we're talking about here is what we're seeing as missing. And so it helps us to change our curriculum. Then we can see what's missing. Because we get the feedback from the incubator. And this is one of the areas. Another one is client counseling. Our students were graduating, they didn't necessarily have those skills. And now we've incorporated that into a legal skills 3 class where every single graduate is coming out with those skills. So I think it's a good area. I'm glad, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, I think this has been a really great conversation, and I thank all of you for attending. And Eric, I thank you for filling us all in on the amazing things that are going on at the law school. I hope that if there's any other questions, feel free to reach out to Eric or Len or me, and we'll get you an answer. Again, thank you so much for being here. And if there's not any other questions, I hope everybody has a great day.